Like many businesses, journalism has been faced with its own massive disruption. Citizen journalists, bloggers, social media, all have changed the role and the expectations of what journalists are expected to deliver. Joining us now for more on his view of what journalism is and ought to be, we welcome Mark Bulgutch, longtime broadcast journalist at CBC Television, whose new book is called That's Why I'm a Journalist. Top Canadian reporters tell their most unforgettable stories. And Mark, it's great to have you back here at TVO.
It's good to be here again.
Let's go back to the beginning for you, because I gather it all started for you with the Montreal Star. You want to tell that story?
Sure. I was, in those days, we actually had little boys delivering newspapers.
How old were you?
I guess I had my first route when I was about 11. And I did my street and the street next to our street. And I delivered the paper, and as I was delivering it, I would read it. And I would think, my God, you know, these guys, who, whose bylines I would see, were actually there when these things happened, and now they get to write about it. And now I'm reading it as I deliver it. And I was, even before I delivered the Montreal Star, my father would bring it home at night. And my father, I know you say your father, and everyone thinks I'm dressed in a suit, and he was dressed in a suit. He wasn't. He was a laborer in a sugar refinery in Montreal. And he could barely read. He went to grade 3. That's when he finished school. And he brought home the Montreal Star. And he read it. Like, he couldn't read a novel, but he could read this. And so I thought there must be something really quite special here. And so I started reading it. And my God, it was special. I mean, I thought of myself as this little kid from Montreal who'd not even seen his own city. And now in my hands, I had the world. I literally thought that. And I used to read, I read the sports, of course, and I'd read the comics, but I read the front page, too, and the news.
At the age of 11?
At the age of 11, 12, sure. And I thought, wow, this is spectacularly interesting.
So a direct line, you think, from that to 40 years working at the CBC?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought if I could actually make a living doing this, imagine. I used to feel like I'd go to a hockey game sometimes at the Montreal Forum, and I'd come out and get on a bus to go home, and I'd feel sorry for the bus driver, because I thought, this guy didn't see the hockey game. And I thought, I don't want a job when I'm stuck doing something when something else is going on that's more interesting. And so, I thought journalism was for me, and I was right.
Let's just understand, though, because journalism today and what a journalist is today, I mean, those may be more confusing things than ever before. Because on the one hand, you're in journalism at CBC for 40 years. Mm-hmm. I worked at CBC for a little while, too. You and I worked together a little bit.
We did.
But we didn't do the same job. Yet we're both journalists. So you tell me, what's a journalist?
Well, I mean, a journalist is somebody, I think, who helps record current affairs and current events and lets a wider audience know what's going on. So, yes, I think at the basic level, that's a reporter. And I think that is the kind of the building block and the foundation. But a reporter, shouting into the wind isn't going to affect many people. And so that reporter needs help. We're in television, and you need more help than perhaps if you were in a newspaper, but you need a lot of help on television. It is a team sport, and it takes a lot of people to get your piece to television. And so, you're a journalist. If you were like me, a producer, I thought of our director as a journalist who was helping understand the story and get it to television in its proper form. Did I think that the floor director was a journalist? Not necessarily, but I did think that he was an important part of our program, and that he had to do his job well to get the journalist report out. I mean, I thought of myself almost as a journalist when I was delivering the Montreal Star. I mean, I was persuaded that I was the last link in this chain from reporter through all the editors and writers and the truck drivers who brought me the paper, and I was the final link to get that newspaper into the hands of a reader.
In which case, you've defined the role of a journalist then fairly broadly here. Yeah. So, does the person who, on his way to work in the morning and sees a traffic fatality, and pulls out his BlackBerry and starts snapping pictures, tweets about them, puts something up on Facebook, writes a little copy about that, that person has conveyed an event of some significance in his life to an audience of sorts. Mm-hmm. Is that person a journalist?
No, I don't think so.
Why not?
I don't think he's any more a journalist than my mother was a journalist, because she'd hear somebody was sick and tell the other neighbor. That's not journalism.
Well, what's the difference?
It's gossip. It's storytelling of some sort. Mm-hmm. The difference I think of journalism as bigger than that. I think of it as important. I think it depends a little bit on what you're covering and what story you're telling. So that if you're telling the neighbor next door that Johnny on the other side has the chicken pox, I don't think that makes you a journalist. I think it makes you a person. And what makes you a journalist, I think, is that ability to find out important things and then to convey that importance to people.
What if the person in that traffic accident was I don't mean to pick on him, was the mayor of Toronto?
Mm-hmm.
Is that person now a journalist?
No, that person's now a witness. And I think it takes more than being a witness to become a journalist. So, yeah, you're right. If somebody sees something and records it on their cell phone, they have become a witness and they become a source, if you will, to a journalist. But to say that's a journalist, no, it's not. It's not, because that means everybody walking around with a smartphone is a journalist. And that's not true.
But that's sort of the point nowadays, right? People think that this profession has been democratized to the point where somebody with a smartphone with a story to tell and access, who's to say they're not a journalist today?
I'm happy to say they're not a journalist today. I mean, this democratization issue, that the internet, for example, has democratized journalism. Well, the internet seems to also have this notion that it doesn't matter if it's true, that in time, this process of democracy will get it right eventually, that if enough people put in enough information, it'll be right eventually. Well, okay, why don't you have monkeys, just typing on the keyboard? Eventually, I guess. They'll write Shakespeare, apparently. Well, that's not journalism. I mean, there's always been a tension between speed and accuracy in what we do. And I think I grew up in a world, and I think you grew up in a world, where we thought accuracy was number one and everything else was number 400. Like nothing even came close to approaching the importance of accuracy. And now speed seems to have nudged pretty close to the top spot in a lot of people's minds. And I think at a lot of places, the need for speed has overtaken the need for accuracy. And this idea of democratization, eventually getting it right, is a world I don't want to know anything about. I really can't deal with that.
Do you have to go to journalism school to be a journalist?
No, I mean, no. I think you have to be pretty smart about, but somebody who has a degree in history, for example, and then comes into a newsroom with a broad range of knowledge, can be taught how to write, how to make all the press the right buttons to make things work. The question is, can you teach someone to tell a story properly?
Do you worry that you sound like an elite fuddy-duddy who says, we're going to decide what journalism and who journalists are, and the rest of you, sorry, but you're not part of the club?
Look, I don't care what you call yourself. I mean, if a guy walking around Toronto with a scalpel in his hands wants to call himself a doctor, I don't care. I mean, there's a college of physicians and surgeons that might have an issue with it, but I don't care if that guy calls himself a doctor. What I do care about is if I fall down on the street, he suddenly comes up to me with the scalpel and starts cutting me open because he has a scalpel. He has a tool of a doctor. Doesn't make him a doctor any more than having a smartphone makes you a journalist. So the language, I don't care. Like, if you want to call yourself a journalist, go ahead, but don't count. I don't want anybody counting on you to find out what's going on in the world.
One case, life and death. The other case, not so much. Does that?
Well, not so much.
Problematic?
You're right. I mean, look, we have a saying, and I'm sure you're familiar. It's television. No one dies, and that's good. Yeah. I don't want to have anybody's life in my hands. But I grew up at a time, and I worked through an era where I thought what we did was important. I found myself thinking what I was doing for a living was helping people understand their world and helping them decode the mysteries of life and in a way that was important to their life. Like, people are busy. Like, people deliver the mail. People are in dental offices. They haven't got time necessarily to watch everything I'm watching when I was sitting there, watching the day's news go by. So I would think it would be helpful to have a gatekeeper. I mean, this idea of a gatekeeper kind of filtering things in a way that helps you organize your life. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Sit there? There are 24-hour news channels now, but nobody sits there for 24 hours or else it's a pretty dull life you're leading. But so if you're going to come for a newscast, or if you're going to come to any one part of the news world, I would hope that the people delivering that news understand what it is I want.
The problem is, somewhere along the way, the people who keep the gates, the gatekeepers, a lot of them lost trust with the people they were serving. And so people don't like us, being the people outside those gates anymore. And now that technology has allowed a lot more people to sort of go around the gatekeepers, I think there's a lot of people out there who think, hey, this isn't so bad after all. We don't have to go through Mark Bulgutch anymore. We can get our own news just doing it ourselves.
Yeah, I know they think that. But it's like reading a newspaper as opposed to reading news online, okay? I think you gain some perspective on things when you read a newspaper, a physical newspaper. You turn the page and you see something that catches your eye that you wouldn't necessarily have searched for, which is kind of the online experience. You have to look for news. And I think there's value in that. That a gatekeeper said, I put this on page 3 for a reason. And if I trust that person, and I'm not saying I trust everything, and not every newspaper is the same. I mean, there are different newspapers. You say newspaper, and somehow everybody thinks New York Times. Well, I don't. I mean, there are other newspapers that may not reach those lofty goals. When you say television, a lot of people think, Ken and Barbie doll anchors at local news. Well, that's not what I did. So, I mean, you pick your spot, right? Trust the people who are your gatekeepers, what I would say.
Well, okay, all right, I'm going to follow up on that as well. You've got lots. How many different journalists in here?
44.
You've got 44 in your book. Okay, and one of them is Nala Ayad from CBC.
Yes.
She tells a story about reporting in Egypt during the Arab Spring.
Right.
Let's put this up, Sheldon. Here's the quote. I get the most satisfaction, she writes, from my job on a day when I'm able to answer the question, why? Almost anybody could be a reporter if all you want is somebody to tell you what's going on, who's doing it and where. But why requires an investment. I knew the answer because I had lived among those people. I actually knew what the hell I was talking about, so said Nala Ayad in the book. Now, again, I'm going to hitch on this again because the problem is too many of your viewers think that I'm not picking on her, but
right.
These 44 have got an agenda, that you've got an agenda, that it's not that you think you know what the hell's going on, it's that you think you know what the hell's going on better than anybody else, and therefore you ought to listen to me. And if I have a personal agenda in this, it's because all of my experience leads me to that agenda. Now, that's what you're asking everybody to buy into, and people don't want to buy it. Well, too many people don't want to buy into that anymore.
Yeah, but why wouldn't they? I mean, Nala lived there. She literally lived there. So why wouldn't she know more about that than I would, who lives in Toronto? Or that living in Toronto, or that a viewer knows living in Regina, or wherever they're living.
She would know more, but
But
what she knows, would that be unbiased? Would it come from a place that the people who watch her can trust? And again, I'm not picking on her. Pick any reporter.
Yes, you trust them because they gain your trust. I mean, nobody just pops up and says, trust me anymore. Why would you trust anybody who just walks into your house every night and says, here's the truth, and here as I found it, and take it in? No one would just accept that unless you actually have a record. And these people have records. I mean, you use Nala there as somebody, and I'm happy to use her. She's a great reporter who did live in the place, who speaks the language, who knows the people she was reporting on. She's a terrific reporter. But look at some of the other things in there. You say, why should we trust these people? Well, because they have the time. This is their job. They love it, but it's a job still, and they are given the time to find things out.
That's true, but how many years will you allow a reporter to stay, when you were working at CBC News, how many years would you allow a reporter to stay in one place before thinking, okay, we got to move them along?
Well, I mean, some people never moved along, and that became a problem, but generally speaking, certainly 2 or 3 years, and we'd say it's time to move on.
Now, why do you move them along?
Well, to make room for another person, mostly. You want young people to not think that somebody who's there and overseas has that job locked up forever. So it's really it's a mobility issue.
There's something else going on, isn't there? Well, isn't there also they've been there a little too long, they're seeing things maybe from a particular point of view, and maybe have come to conclusions that are now not open to other sources of information?
Well, you also want them to come back to Canada for every once in a while. I mean, you lose touch with the people you're reporting for. Like you sit there and in London every day and you become British. I mean, their politics better than our politics, right? And so you want them to come home and touch base. I mean, we used to send them in the old days tape of the National so they could see the heck of the program they were working for, because you couldn't see it. Now, of course, online they can.
But here's how you define reporting this, and this, we're going to talk about the Robin Doolittle situation here, which I found absolutely fascinating. Reporters should go to where something is happening, they should see what is happening, and then they should tell us what they saw. That's a very great and basic definition of what reporting is. So Robin Doolittle, when she worked at the Toronto Star, she's now at the Globe, she did exactly that.
Yes.
She went to a place, she sat in a guy's car, she saw a video of Rob Ford, the then mayor of Toronto, smoking crack. A very significant percentage of the population of this city, province, and country did not believe what she had seen with her own eyes and reported on in the pages of the Toronto Star. They wanted proof, because her seeing it wasn't enough. What does that tell you about the state of our profession today?
It says a lot, and nothing good. I mean, when I saw her report, I believed it instantly. I mean, to think that the Toronto Star would allow that kind of serious allegation to get onto their front page without being 100% sure, to me was ludicrous. To think that could possibly be wrong was a non-starter. So who didn't believe it? Well, I think you start with the people who loved Rob Ford.
Yeah, Ford Nation.
Yes. So they said, our guy can't do any wrong. The Toronto Star is out to get him, and they actually do this. These are people who have no clue, it seems to me, on how a big news organization works. Like, if that had not been true, where would the Star be today? Dead. They could not make a mistake that big in their own backyard and think they could survive. So for them, this was, to put that out there and not be right is like would have ended their lives, ended it.
But I wonder whether part of the reason people didn't believe Robin Doolittle, even though she saw it with her own two eyes, was that there have been too many journalists over the last many years who have made ethical lapses, and you know the expression, one bad apple ruins a whole barrel. What do we do about that?
Well, a lot of things have gone wrong in journalism, a lot of things, and among them, newsrooms have become smaller. There are fewer editors. There are fewer checks on the power of any one individual. What I talked about, the speed that we put things out there now, so there's less time to make sure you're right. It's a luxury to be a journalist in a place that values journalism. I mean, I think a lot of places that are journalistic organs now are out to make money. They see it as a business. I mean, your intro to this whole segment talked about the business of journalism. I never thought about it as a business.
Well, you've had the luxury, as I do,
Yes.
we've had the luxury of working in public television, where there's a different mandate. But we've also seen that some of the people who have behaved the worst during the last few years have worked in public television. I don't need to go through the names again. We all know who they are. And it causes, I think, the rest of us who work in public television a lot of angst, because I know when the headlines were screaming about the bad behavior of some of these other people, people were coming up to me saying, God, tell me you don't have these kinds of skeletons in your closet. And, thankfully I don't think I do, but it's a problem.
Sure.
What are we going to do about this problem?
Look, I think if journalism has a problem with bad apples, there's almost nothing you can do about it, because every organization has a problem with bad apples. There are bad police officers, there are bad doctors, there are bad dentists, there are bad everything.
It's worse for us.
Well, it's worse for us because trust
is our business.
Is what we need, right? We need trust. And that's why, the Star couldn't have been wrong about Rob Ford. And it's why, when I hear certain words, like on a television newscast, like I think, okay, they're putting their reputation on the line when they say that. Because, like CBC News has learned. Those were magic words for me for 40 years. Like when we said that, like I wasn't going to be like 83% sure that we were right. We were going to be 100% sure that we were right. And there's less of that going on. I mean, you go back to, a lot of it is self-inflicted wounds, right? We invite people not to trust us because we've decided somehow that speed is more important than accuracy. So you go back to Newtown, the massacre there of those poor little kids killed, and yet, there's a war among journalists to be first with every little sliver of information. So even the New York Times, 150 years of building up a reputation for trustworthiness, credibility, they think they have to compete in a world of Twitter to put out information. Like, I don't know why they think that, but they do. And so they get wrong the name of the shooter. they get wrong the fact, they say the mother worked at the school, she didn't. They say the principal let in the shooter, he didn't. They say the shooter used a rifle, then they corrected it and said he used a handgun. Then they correct the correction. Now something's wrong when you're correcting corrections, right? So why does the New York Times think that it has to compete on Twitter to get every morsel of information out first? I asked that, but I don't have the answer, because to me it makes zero sense. Zero. I mean, I was in our control room at CBC on 9/11. And like, I kept getting calls with information, and I'm trying to say, okay, like, I don't want to put things out there that are wrong, but I do, I have this competitive juice in me, like we all do. We all want to be first. Again, somehow, it's hard to fight that urge to be first. And so somebody called and said they're evacuating skyscrapers in Toronto. Sounded plausible, right? Planes are running around, and the towers hit New York. So I say, I didn't do anything, right? And she calls again. And she says,
who's the source?
Well, it was someone in the newsroom was calling me to say that she's heard this, right? And I said, I'm not doing anything about this. I said, how do you know? Imagine, I asked that question, how do you know? And she said something to the effect of, my aunt's cousin's brother knows somebody who works in one, right? So she didn't tell me this at the beginning, right? First she just says they're evacuating skyscrapers in Toronto. So I could have put that on television. It sounded reasonable. Would have been neat. I would have been the first to say it. But by asking that one question, like, how do you know? I say to myself, well, that's terrible. And I said to her, we're in downtown Toronto. Maybe you should go outside and have a look and then call me back.
So you saved Peter Mansbridge from looking like an idiot on that.
Well, yeah, but who remembers? That's the thing. People think if you make a mistake, no one remembers. I remember, and I don't want to do that. I mean, we don't want to make mistakes where I come from, but this democratization and this need for speed and this willingness to be wrong because you want to be able somewhere down the road to say, you heard it here first. Well, okay, I don't think so.
So if we're in a world now where the New York Times feels it needs to compete with BuzzFeed and Vice and all of these other perfectly wonderful, but places with different mandates, you would have thought, than the New York Times, where are we in journalism today?
Well, we're in a place where values aren't the same as they used to be. And there are reasons for it. You can blame the internet, you can blame CNN in some ways. I mean, 1980 doesn't seem like that long ago, but boy, it was a long time ago. When CNN came on the air, we laughed at them. We said 24 hours. There isn't enough news for 24 hours. And we were right about that. There isn't enough news to go for 24 hours. So what did they do?
Not going to stop everybody from trying to fill it, though.
Yes, and what did they fill it with? With blather, right? With talking heads and phony confrontations, and then breaking news everywhere. I mean, when the Pope was in New York, I was watching CNN one evening, and up comes breaking news. What was the breaking news? The Pope has reached the place where he's going to sleep for tonight. Now, look, under what set of criteria does that become breaking news?
But we're not going back, Mark. We're not going to go back to the days where we quality control and fact check everything, the glory days, hold people to account in the same ways. We're not going back. So what do we do now?
But why aren't we going back? Why can't we stand there, and why can't somebody stand there and say, but it's not right. Like, we're going down the wrong way. Don't go back, find a new way. But what is wrong with saying in some news organization that, if we're second, the sun will still rise tomorrow, right? But we want to make sure that everything we say is true, right? Now, I'm not saying you have to, triple, quadruple check, take 4 days and be 4 days behind your competitors, but surely we have some instinct in us to put on the brakes to say what we care about more than anything else is that what we tell you is true. I mean, surely we have that in us.
Well, if one of the reasons business is running into ethical problems nowadays is that the business schools aren't graduating people with a good sense of ethics, can we make the same corollary about journalism? Maybe the people who are making the decisions that we got to be faster, more entertaining, more slick, more everything like that, but not necessarily accurate, is because our J schools are pumping out graduates with the wrong values. Is that possible?
No, because I don't know any journalist who gets into this business to do what it is that we're doing. That is to say, nobody that I know, who I teach, for example, decided, I think I want to be a journalist because I want to put on television a water skiing squirrel. Like, who gets into journalism for that? Nobody. So how does the water skiing squirrel get on television? Or how does that breaking news banner get on CNN? It gets there because it's become a business, right? And this chase of eyeballs is killing us. It didn't kill us so much when there were only 3 choices, because it meant that even if you were chasing eyeballs the wrong way, there were 2 other organizations who were chasing them the right way, and enough people were still watching this to make it a viable business. And what's happened now is there's 500 of these channels, and 498 are doing it the wrong way, and the 2 who are scrambling like little mice to try to do it right don't have enough viewers to make a viable business, or readers, or whatever it is they need. So there's the problem, right? Okay. So what are we going to do about that, right? Why, so it's not the journalists, I don't think. I think every journalist who puts a water skiing squirrel on is ashamed of themselves. I think they actually say, why am I doing this? But they don't stop to think it because the boss wants it, right? The people who look at ratings like it's blood, they want numbers. And whatever it takes to get the numbers, they'll do. So, but your program, for example, you do a fairly hard news, sophisticated program, right? But if someone came to you and said, Steve, on tomorrow night's show, I think what we're going to do is get a guy in here to tell us how to look better in a bathing suit. Okay, doesn't fit what you do. And maybe you would say, I don't want to do that. We're not going to do that. And maybe you have the power to say that. But if you were some newbie coming in from a journalism school and they said, tomorrow's program is about how to look good in a bathing suit, you'd say, aye, aye, sir. Because you have to make a living. And so what I'm saying is that the people at the top of the food chain, they're the ones who have to tell people that, no, I won't do this anymore. So the book, it's not why I wrote it. I think it's a good read and people who are interested in news can read it. But I certainly think that a young person reading it will say to themselves, this is what journalism is. This is what I want to do. So why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, why am I running around doing crazy things when this is what I want to do? I mean, it's like they come into a newsroom. Like, I grew up and you grew up in an era where, as I say, we thought news was important. I call it steak and potatoes. And what are we getting now? We're getting potato chips and Coca-Cola. And a young person comes into that newsroom and sees potato chips and Coca-Cola and thinks, oh, well, that's a very nice diet, right? They don't know their steak and potatoes. So read the book, see what real reporters do, see what real journalism is, see what we can do if we retain the power and don't give it up to the corporate will of more viewers, more readers. That's not why I got into journalism. It's not why you got into journalism. It's not why anybody gets into journalism.
Well said. That's why I'm a journalist. Mark Bulgutch. So funny to have you here at TVO, given that I worked for you for quite a while, and now here we are having a discussion on television about some of the stuff that we just did.
Important stuff, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like it's easy to say that, just give people what they want, right? Give people what they want. Well, so how's that going to make them better citizens of the world?
Well, it won't, but it'll make Rupert Murdoch rich, and that's where it's at. Mark, thanks for coming into TVO.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.